Welcome. Thank you for joining our Enterprise Content Management Best Practice Series webinar. I'm Becky Melody, your hostess for today's presentation. Our featured speaker is Daniel O'Connor, Chief Executive Officer, Innovo Commerce. The discussion today will cover introductions, USDM at a glance, webinar logistics, and our discussion topic, successfully replacing your legacy document system with FDA 21 CFR Part 11 compliant SharePoint Solutions. Daniel O'Connor brings extensive Microsoft-based software design, development, and commercialization expertise to his customer engagements. He has worked closely with SharePoint since 2003. Innovo Commerce is a leading provider of SharePoint solutions for both content management and clinical portals. The applications developed by Innovo Commerce are used by more than 50% of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies in the clinical environment. U.S. data management is focused exclusively on life science domain. We're the market leader in providing IT, quality, and regulatory compliance professional service solutions to the regulated industry. We're headquartered in Ventura, California, and we're a compliance partner for many best-of-breed vendors, including Oracle, SAP, Sparta Systems, which is TrackWise, and Agilent Technologies. We've delivered more than 1,000 successful projects with over 130 life science clients, and we're a preferred compliance partner for small, mid-tier, and large life science companies. We specialize in assisting clients with reducing regulatory risk while maximizing their investment in quality management systems, as well as ECM, business intelligence, laboratory instrument systems, and IT infrastructure. Our directive is to simplify, unify, and optimize compliance and overall business objectives. The content will be covered in about 30 minutes, and then we'll invite you to interact with the team on our iLink message board, which you'll see in the lower left of your screen. This session is being recorded and will be posted on the USD website, so you can review information or share with team members at a later date. And remember, the overall goal here is to facilitate discussion and share ideas, and then explore solutions as a team together. Thanks again for joining us, and now I'll turn the presentation over to Daniel.
Thank you very much, Rebecca, and U.S. Data Management for sponsoring this event. And I want to thank everybody for attending. I think it's a very important topic given how the market is evolving. And again, myself, my company have been actively involved with SharePoint deployments and FDA compliant environments since our founding, and even previously been very active with other companies, helping companies adopt, extend, enhance SharePoint for compliant environments. Real briefly, our agenda today is an introduction. I'm going to talk briefly about SharePoint Life Science goals. Although they apply to other industries, again, the focus here is pharmaceutical, biotechnology, medical device, and GXP FDA compliance drivers. We'll talk briefly about the emergence of SharePoint as a standard platform for business collaboration, triggers to move from a legacy system you may have to a SharePoint-based system, issues with moving from a legacy system, compliance discussion, overview of how you start thinking about qualifying SharePoint and validating applications, and possible proactive next steps. So firstly, introduction. Again, U.S. Data Management is really a national leader in providing compliance services around various technologies. And we're a product vendor. We do our own services, but we partner with U.S. Data Management because of their comprehensive knowledge, top resources, and scope around the United States to help customers. So it's a great partnership, and the goal is to really quickly and cost-effectively help companies out there navigate SharePoint and learn how to take advantage of it, expeditiously. Again, our collective group has decades of experience generally in validation qualification with IT systems. And in InnovaCommerce specifically, our group actually designed a product called Argus Safety, which is a safety adverse event system which Oracle acquired. Built compliance modules around ERP solutions and also, of course, compliance around SharePoint-based solutions. So what are some SharePoint Life Science goals? Why is this relevant? What's going on? Well, first of all, companies, what we're finding out there in life sciences, whether it's drug development or device development, we're finding that they have to do more with less. There's more globalization, there's more complexity, and companies are not necessarily growing like they used to. So they're depending more on contractors, they're depending more on technology to help drive efficiencies to be more productive. So business productivity, flexibility, and compliance is really a key driver for some of these implementation goals. And the reason is that with SharePoint, unlike some legacy systems, you can set up controlled environments that you can validate and non-controlled, non-validated environments for collaboration across the enterprise, for example. So, I mean, it's technically possible in some of the other systems, but it's much more difficult. So SharePoint really is an open system that you can lock down in certain areas so that you can kind of really leverage the technology. And Microsoft's done a fantastic job of evolving this technology for this purpose, and that's one reason why it's all over the place. Economies of scale. You know, once you invest in SharePoint and you know how to leverage its capabilities, I mean, you can drive enormous value via economy of scale. You pay once and you utilize for multiple business purposes. And you have a common IT administrative support function once you have the right people trained on how to administer SharePoint, keep it governed, etc. So that's very important. One of the third goals here is enterprise integration and rationalization. I mean, especially in the drug development or device development context, but even in other industries, banking, healthcare, it doesn't matter. There's silos of information, silos of applications. And there's a general trend towards rationalizing and standardizing those applications to make things easier, make things more productive. And so, you know, Microsoft's products are heavy in the enterprise now. You know, SQL Server, Windows Server, SharePoint, you know, of course, the Office products, and that's going to be the case. And so it is a very powerful platform to start rationalizing your knowledge workers across an organization. And, you know, Microsoft's investing in cloud-based technology like Office 365, so you can start to leverage that. In fact, our company's built on Office 365 for all of our emails and everything else. So it's a powerful platform to start rationalizing your company on and be more efficient. Okay, so go to the next slide. So the emergence of SharePoint as a standard platform for business collaboration. So I mean, this chart, this is the Gartner Magic Quadrant. This is for enterprise content management collaboration market. Now, if this is 2010, okay. If this diagram would have been 2005, Microsoft would have been way towards the left and down a bit, okay? But Microsoft is now, even from Gartner, established as the leading vendor in this space. They're a platform vendor. You still have to do things to SharePoint to get your needs met in many cases. But you can see that traditionally IBM or Oracle or OpenText or EMC would be in that space, and Microsoft is just continuing to pull into the leadership. And now probably if we looked at 2012, at the end of 2012, Microsoft will be way ahead. Okay? So what triggers a move off of a legacy enterprise content management or document management system or other similar system to a SharePoint-based approach? Well, you know, we're in the market a lot, and there's other good products out there. So this isn't meant to say, hey, you know, there's other products that are not SharePoint-based. I mean, there's all kinds of great products out there. This is really, there's certain instances where you just have to take a look at, hey, maybe we can be better with this approach, okay, that we've seen out there. One is existing systems not being supported properly. So and that can have a material impact on operations. So for example, if you have a legacy system, whether it's a document management system, some kind of clinical portal, what have you, and the vendor is in multiple industries and not really providing the support you need, the updates, the upgrades, I mean, it becomes a real problem, and it can materially impact your business over time. Documents are the lifeblood of a drug development organization, for example. The existing systems not materially investing in verticals such as life sciences. So that's a similar issue in that, you have a company that may be big and maybe life sciences is 10% of its focus. So increasingly, the first bullet point materializes because of that. Lack of support, lack of innovation in the areas that you needed the product to evolve. In many cases, there's antiquated technology. There's systems that were built, 10, 15 years ago, and they're just not keeping up with the times, and business users are getting more sophisticated, and they want more capability right away. The cost of supporting existing systems, taking into account opportunity costs, are higher than switching. So in some cases, your companies are spending a fortune supporting legacy systems, and if they do a ROI or a cost-benefit analysis, they realize, wow, we can switch over to a new environment and get more productivity and actually save money on a monthly basis. So, you have to still drive a project. You have to make it happen, but we're seeing that. We've been involved with some of those. A need for productivity gains. This is an important one. This is more soft ROI, but it's really around, ultimately, it's hard ROI. Leveraging the ability to use your content management or document management, your intranet, your extranet portal, and business process improvement platform. So, again, it goes back to the notion that SharePoint is a multifaceted system that you can use for controlled activities as well as lots of standard business collaboration activities, the work, business process improvement, portal, etc. And again, another reason why people are moving off of other legacy systems into SharePoint is it's part of this movement in software to have standardization, to over time move away from the silo approach to a more unified computing platform where everybody's operating off the same sheet of music as an analogy, and there's definitely a move to that. We have to move away. We have to have a layer above the silos where we can, access information, make better decisions, and be more productive. Okay, these are some real-life examples. I can't go into names and too much detail, but I can say I can talk about some of the legacy systems that are out there that we've dealt with, and I have to say that these legacy systems are good too. It's just for whatever reason, people have they get stuck and they have to move for whatever reason. The business drivers justify that they do. So a couple cases, 3 cases, we have tier 1 companies, and we're moving them off of one system to a SharePoint-based system, and it's either a clinical portal or a document management system. Again, we're not. This isn't to minimize some of the legacy systems. Okay, this is just to say this is the reality that people are moving to SharePoint-based solutions for the reasons I mentioned. The productivity, the ability to reuse, leverage, standardize. We are seeing generally migrations or movement from legacy to SharePoint in either document management, and typically you might see it with SOP management, with regulatory documents. But we're also seeing we're very involved with clinical portals. We have a product and people are adopting this product because it helps them really meet some needs out in the market with collaboration with their investigator sites. And also there's a lot of smaller, mid-sized biotech and device companies that are moving to SharePoint. And there's multiple vendors doing this. I mean, U.S. Data Management is in a great position to help a client identify what the right SharePoint-based vendor is for the right need, and there's different needs out there, and What's really nice about the Microsoft platform, too, is there's multiple vendors providing, for example, compliance, document compliance products. And I can go into that in a little bit. I will, actually. But it's a very competitive ecosystem, which is good. Competition is good. You get more value. You get better pricing. Okay, so basic steps. I'm going to move right along here. And we have detailed, schematics and things like that about actual projects of moving legacy from a legacy system into a new SharePoint-based system. But the idea is that, first of all, you really want to have an enterprise SharePoint strategy. What we've seen is a lot of folks will go, and one department in a company will say, hey, we've heard we need a document control system, and we want to buy a product for whatever reason. They pick a product, they buy it, but it may not fit into their enterprise SharePoint strategy. What we're saying here is that SharePoint is an enterprise mission-critical application now, platform, and it has to be taken in that light. So that means that you want to have, if possible, a overview of how you can use this across your enterprise, how many different controlled applications can be potentially realized in the system, how you architect that. There's a whole series of things. So ideally, you have that kind of dialogue going in your company. You obviously want your business justification ROIs. You have to identify the gaps. SharePoint out of the box is not. It's a system that you qualify, and then either ISVs or companies like us or others build products on top that you actually validate, or you can custom build things. You can build your own validated app, or you can work with consultants to build it. But the idea is that there are gaps, and you have to understand them, and we'll go into that real quickly. I won't go into every one of these, but I think everybody on the call kind of gets the gist of this, that there is steps that you have to take. And, you really have to have business justification, especially nowadays. So this is an important topic. SharePoint, the example is document management, document control. Does it contain all the features necessary to be compliant with FDA 21 Part 11? Okay? And again, there may be some folks on this call that are in different industries that are interested in SharePoint compliance, and this is kind of similar because, whether it's in healthcare or in financial services, there are compliance issues, and you need to be able to, lock down certain types of documents, have audit trails, the like. So FDA is a pretty rigid standard, and you can take some of those concepts and apply them to other regulatory requirements. So this is the font is kind of small here. My apologies, but let's take SharePoint 2007. I mean, it'd be great to have a survey of everybody on the call who has SharePoint 2007 versus 2010. But SharePoint 2007, it was really their first really great product. I mean, there were some limitations with it, but it really established a new milestone for Microsoft SharePoint, and it was wildly adopted. It's everywhere. But to make it Part 11 compliant, if you want to do that, there's some areas where you have to enhance it. One is sort of around dynamic workflow lifecycle management, and you can either use third-party OEM tools for that. The leader being Nintex. Nintex is by far it's a workflow tool that is built to plug into SharePoint, and it's a powerful tool. And so you need a workflow capability. You can actually design workflow inside of SharePoint, Microsoft SharePoint itself. There's some native workflow capability for more basic workflows like HR reviews, expense reviews. It's pretty good, but to get the more intensive lifecycle management, you're going to need to go into Windows Workflow Foundation, which is part of the .NET framework, to actually build your own custom workflows, or go with a product that OEMs, one of those third-party tools I mentioned, or actually kind of use those third-party tools to build it yourself. Electronic signature, same thing. You need to build that in. Numbering. There's a few items, but the gist of it is, excuse me, that SharePoint out of the box is a generic platform, just like some of the legacy systems are. You need to do things to it to make it compliant in a GxP FDA environment. Now, 2010 is the next version of Microsoft SharePoint that actually is more robust, because with every release, Microsoft takes feedback from the field and incorporates it in Redmond into their product development. So if like SharePoint 2007 from the standpoint of being GxP compliant ready out of the box, maybe it was 50% there. SharePoint 2010 is probably 70% there, and that's great for a product vendor like us. That's that means less work, right? It's a platform that you can pull together some code and a couple pieces of configuration and capability to actually have a controlled application on top of SharePoint. We can do it faster, we can build it cheaper, and therefore we can pass those savings on to customers. And there's multiple companies that are doing this, and that list is growing. So again, I urge you, if this is a topic of interest, to give U.S. Data Management a call and to get an objective overview of all the different vendors and their strengths and weaknesses, and do a thorough analysis. Okay. Now, again, this is build versus buy, and this is, you can build your own SharePoint applications for specific purposes, whether it's a clinical investigator portal, a document management system, a training system, all that's possible. We typically advise people, if you're if you're a small to mid-sized firm and you have limited resources, that's out of the question. It's just too hard. I mean, just getting SharePoint developers is very tricky. There still is the supply of SharePoint developers is less than the demand. The platform grew so fast that there's just not enough talent out there. Okay, I mean, we need to get more training and get more developers. So it's probably better if you're a small to mid-sized firm to buy a product if you have a specific need, if the product exists out there. And again, that's where U.S. Data Management is great guide for that, because again, their focus is analyzing what tool in the SharePoint world is best for what purpose, okay, and budget and etc. Now, for larger organizations, we have seen companies build their own applications. In some cases, some functionality may not exist, and the company has the budget and the resources. They will build it. To build your own product, you need to find good SharePoint architects and developers, and you need at least a business analyst, and you need QA testers, and so it's a big effort. And we've seen some big companies early on try to build their own applications, and it didn't work out too well. So we think that the best approach is, if you have a specific need, look at the market, look at your needs, look at what the different products can do. Work with a vendor like U.S. Data Management to help guide you to assess what's best for you and make the best decision for you. Okay. Again, this is I won't spend too much time on this because we have little time. But you really want to evaluate a vendor based on your needs, your budget, your requirements, your timing. There's a whole series of things, and you want a partner that can stick with you and deliver what you need. And again, there is a shortage of SharePoint technical talent in the market because the platform grew far faster than the supply of people that understand it. And I know this intimately. I've been involved with SharePoint development and deployment really since almost 10 years now, and I can tell you that it is still a reality. Okay. So qualify. One of the things that we've done with U.S. Data Management, collaborating, is really, early on having a turnkey offering to qualify SharePoint and validation considerations for applications on top. And we did some major companies early on. We helped them. We even did retroactive qualification. So that's an area that we feel that we are thought leaders and have a lot of knowledge and even tools, automated tools to help organizations do that. When you're looking at SharePoint and qualifying it, first of all, there's different options. A SharePoint farm is a unit. It's the largest boundary. It's how a SharePoint instance is defined at the largest level. And there's different ways to think about it. Smaller, mid-sized companies really have one choice. Typically, they have a single farm with multiple applications. That's where you have one SharePoint environment, and you have controlled applications if you want, document management and other types of GXP applications, and then you have non-controlled applications for things like your intranet, team collaboration sites, projects, things like that. Some companies, again, if they have bigger budgets, they'll have two farms. They'll have one farm for non-controlled applications and one farm for controlled applications. And then bigger companies we've seen where some even have separate farms for each controlled application, and that just gets expensive because it's more hardware, more software, and some companies host. We actually do hosting services, managed compliant hosting services for our applications, and we're seeing a trend where companies will actually host their application with a managed hosting provider that focuses on GXP compliance. And then even Microsoft itself, they're investing heavily in their cloud-based infrastructure where you can host SharePoint in, for example, a HIPAA-compliant environment. Now, you have to drill into that environment, and you have to understand it. This is, again, a data centers that Microsoft's investing in all over the world. But it's very exciting. I mean, there's a recognition that people are going to be storing information in the cloud, accessing it from the cloud, and companies like Microsoft are responding and investing heavily to ensure that data is secure and that data adheres to various compliance requirements. So I'm going to just quickly go through this because we have little time. Again, today's topic is what we call single mixed-use farm. And here, this is a very generalized summary, but the idea is that you have your SharePoint farm. You have cordoned off SharePoint applications that are controlled. For example, a document management system that you have to the vendor verifies and that you as a customer validate. And then you have other not controlled but tightly governed applications, like for example, custom workflows that you still have to govern from a governance model. And then you have more loosely governed out-of-the-box functionality like team sites that you can just provision, and there's no risk. All this is, we have a whole methodology for this that's based on risk. And if you want more information on that, please, feel free to follow up with U.S. Data Management, and they can provide more information. Benefits of this mixed-use approach, especially for smaller, mid-sized companies or departments, is that you just get a big bang for the buck. In many cases, you already own SharePoint, and you get to take advantage of multiple capabilities, and you get economic benefits, integration benefits, etc. The qualification itself is based on we typically, when we set up do qualification, we set up environments. We typically, if we host it, we have a whole reference architecture, which I'm going to show you. We then itemize that reference architecture. Those are hardware servers. Often it's virtualized. We'll do a lot of virtualization and with U.S. Data Management, and then we build the infrastructure to match the architecture, and then following IT internal and our own IT quality procedures and standards. We then go through the process of actually qualifying that all of the components in the infrastructure do what they're supposed to do. And I'm sure a lot of folks in this call are familiar with the qualification process, so I won't go into it too deeply and keep moving because of time. Here is a standard. This is a reference architecture for small to medium, I would say medium, so up to maybe 10, 20,000 users. And we have templates for these for all kinds of scenarios because, again, we do a lot of managed hosting for major pharmaceutical companies. We have two environments where you'll have your production center with the test, validation, production environment, and then a disaster recovery environment. And all this is managed You can think of it as sort of a cloud-based approach. Again, this is one approach. Microsoft, again, is investing heavily in their Office 365 environments that are very compelling and exciting. And there's a lot of innovation happening in the market right now around Microsoft technology. So if there's any questions on this type of activity, please forward them to US Data Management, and they can help guide you into the different scenarios and how to reference architect your SharePoint environment so that you can scale and meet the needs of all your business groups. So we recommend, and we're just about out of time here, if you want to use SharePoint for GXP controlled activities, we really believe in trying to bring together your IT group, business representation, and your quality, internal quality folks, because you really have to have consensus. SharePoint initially came in through IT, which is fine, but it wasn't considered an application initially that was going to be heavily validated, right? IT departments would deploy it for basic collaboration, intranets, extranets, and then all of a sudden you start to see this demand to use it for controlled activities, but then that brings in, quality and other business groups. So you have to connect the dots in the organization and build stakeholders, because it is a mission critical technology platform now. And we like these risk assessment workshops, and we've helped US Data Management do these in the past, and they're very effective because it could be a 1 or 2 day event where you just identify business drivers for controlled activities in SharePoint, whether it's document management, some kind of clinical application, some kind of sales and marketing application, because that's controlled too if you're a commercial drug producer and your content that is being distributed out in the market, that's heavily controlled, and you need compliance checks and balances from a document management perspective, for example. You create a stakeholder committee with IT, QA, and such, and you can do this yourself, but sometimes it helps to bring in a third party to kind of just facilitate it. We have a methodology. We like you to consider surveying your existing SharePoint environments. How many farms do you have, if any? A detailed list of configurations, a detailed list of customizations, breakdown of business owners. I mean, it's very important. And bigger companies that are on this call may have multiple SharePoint farms now. But if you want to qualify these existing, retroactively, we have a methodology, and US Data Management is very good at that, but you need to start surveying that information if you want to qualify these things. Because many SharePoint environments are not qualified, right? They're maybe qualified from one standpoint, but not necessarily in the context of moving towards a GXP validated application on top. So we want to make sure that you do that right and that you can then solidly take advantage of the system. You develop a risk matrix for these SharePoint farms, and that risk includes regulatory risk, business and technology risk, and we have templates that US Data Management has created, and it really helps to potentially accelerate the process. But you guys have these as well. There's your QA and IT departments will have this as well. So it really is a collaborative effort. And from there, you put together a qualification plan, with if you have to retroactively do it with existing environments. In some cases, you may want to set up a new environment. It just really depends. So with that, that's a lot of information to cover in a short period of time. I apologize if I couldn't go too deeply into one area, but hopefully this was at least a helpful overview of what we've learned so far.
Absolutely. And thank you, Daniel. Thank you so much for presenting the solid information there. At this time, we do invite our guests to ask questions via the public chat. Again, it's on the bottom left of your screen. And looks like our first question here is from Ralph. How long does it take to deploy a SharePoint-based document management system for managing SOPs from start to finish?
Oh, that's a good question, and that question, it depends, right? I mean, that could go actually relatively fast to a long time, depending upon, first and foremost, what are your specific requirements? I mean, 80% of software projects disappoint because of bad requirements elicitation. So, if you nail your requirements and you're working with a vendor and they help you make sure requirements translation from your needs to the vendor or consulting from whoever's going to deliver it for you are apples to apples, that saves you a lot of pain later on. So I would say, front load your requirements finalization stage. Then you move into a design and deployment of a product and configuration. You're looking at anywhere from anywhere from a couple months to a year. It really depends, but it's possible for example, certain types of document control, basic SOP management to get that done in 3 months, and that's very fast. I mean, traditional legacy content management systems can take years and tens of millions of dollars. So, and in some cases there's no choice, but I think it can be anywhere from 2-3 months to a year.
Thank you, Daniel. Let's see, our next question is from Mark. He'd like to know, does SharePoint handle virtual sets of documents out of the box?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, okay, so Microsoft in 2007, that was really tricky. In 2010, and I think I get where that question is going, because in certain document management systems, you have sort of virtual documents for, for example, you might have a SOP, you have a policy, a SOP, that then there's a deviation, and you might have like 20 records underneath it that are associated with that SOP that need to be treated as a package, so that if a SOP changes, there's 20 underlying records that also need to change. And I need to be able to associate that. So that's where Microsoft, out of the box in 2010, developed the document sets technology, so that to make that possible now. So that's what I really enjoy about working with SharePoint and Microsoft technology, is that they're constantly investing in new features and the new releases that really help make our lives easier. So yeah, that's possible. Now you still have to do some, you still need a vendor that really knows what they're doing to productize that, but the core features are there now to be able to facilitate that, which is very, very nice. So that's a great question.
Thank you, Daniel. Let's see. Dave is asking a two-part question. What challenges have you seen with externalizing a SharePoint-based document management system? Part 2 is, what are the pitfalls?
Okay, so I can speak to, there's challenges with all technology. So we have a clinical portal that's really the leading one out there. That's an externalized SharePoint technology. One of the challenges is the user management. So in the case where you're going to externalize and you're going to have tens of thousands of external users, you need a very user-friendly administrative module to manage that. So, for example, whether it's a portal where you have investigator sites or CROs, somebody might leave an investigator site. Somebody has to be able to delete a person that left. That can become a nightmare. You can't scale SharePoint out of the box to do that. You need to enhance it from an externalization standpoint. Now, the way we solve that problem is we actually built a product that does that. There's other tools out there that can provision that handle externalizing and provisioning users in SharePoint. I don't even know all the ones that do that now, but that is one big challenge. Then the other challenge is authentication. We are now moving towards claims-based authentication, so that means that single sign-on is a big deal for an externalized document management system or a portal or what have you. So, partner A logs in, and once they're in, they have access to all kinds of information. And there's a single sign-on technology in the Microsoft world that kind of focuses on what we call claims-based authentication, and or that's a process. And so I think it's still tricky. I mean, we've run into challenges around doing that because it's complex, and sometimes there's other authentication technologies that you have to work with, and you think, hey, it's going to take 6 weeks to do that, and it takes 10 weeks. So you just have to really do your homework, try to find experts that understand externalization in SharePoint, and they're out there. We know, we do a lot in that world with U.S. data management, and there's other experts out there. But you really want to get people that really know what they're doing, because otherwise you can run into delays, and nobody likes that.
Absolutely. Next question is from Stan, and it kind of hits a topic that's a specialty area for U.S. data management around compliance in the cloud. He's asking, can applications be installed on SharePoint if it's cloud hosted? And also would like to know, clarify please, what is a SharePoint farm?
Okay, so the first one, Microsoft is investing, and again, U.S. Data Management's probably more an expert than me on this because they've been working directly with Microsoft and their cloud-based offerings. Microsoft is investing, in the aggregate, probably billions of dollars in cloud technology right now. So, they're in it for the long run. There's going to be a few vendors that nail it. They'll be one of them. Okay, so. I'll defer to U.S. Data Management on that because they had a whole program around that, and they're more qualified to drill into that. But just suffice it to say yes, and also Microsoft is very eager to work with companies. So I think it's a good time to start talking to them about that because it's new and there's a lot of interest in Redmond. And there's competition. They want to beat up on companies like Google that are trying to come into that space. So I think it's a good time to talk to Microsoft about those things if that's an interest. Now the second question was, goodness, Rebecca, I'm sorry.
Okay, what's a SharePoint farm?
Oh, that's just the highest sort of administrative boundary unit of a SharePoint environment. So you have your SQL server, your SharePoint application server, any web front ends. You draw a line around, a circle around all that. That's a SharePoint farm.
Terrific. Looks like we're going to be taking one last question as we're hitting the 45-minute mark here, and just so appreciative that so many of you would stay on with us this line. Let's see. Bilal is asking, how secure is it to use SharePoint? Any special encryption does it use to communicate through public internet?
Yeah, there's different. HTTPS and there's different classifications of security. So, I actually had helped launch Computer Sciences Corporation's SharePoint practice, and we had to deal with some of our clients were Department of Defense related, or they maybe were making products that the Department of Defense would consume, and there you're dealing with very tricky, that's very complicated at that level. You're dealing with ITAR, which is a law around any kind of products that you're making that have national security implications, and there it gets very tricky because not only is there encryption, but we have to control who can access what. So a non-U.S. citizen, even if they have a green card and they work for a company, cannot access certain information. So the level of security in that type of environment is very intense, and the reality is that you need standard. Technology is not enough. There's typically always some kind of holes you can find. Typically, it's a regime of not only technology, encryption, but also policies and procedures that have to be audited and stringently enforced. And again, ITAR is an example, and that has to do with, again, you're making products that are consumed by either government agencies that have national defense implications, and they don't want people to see certain things. On through, more just basic HTTPS encryption over the internet can be fine. You audit it, you verify that it's secure. But there's different levels, and it depends upon what your security classifications are for the product that you're doing. Encryption at the database level gets tricky in the older, SQL 2000. The latest version of SQL makes it easier, so that gets into a whole other area. you encrypt the data across the internet, and then some companies want to encrypt the data actually at the database level. So that can get tricky as well.
Thank you,
If you want more information on that, I would need to get our security architect to, if there's further questions on that topic, we can, get somebody involved, and U.S. Data Management can send more clarification around scenarios.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Daniel. And you know what, we will touch on another one quickly. Another question came in here asking about a different topic, compliance-related. Ron is asking, how effective can SharePoint be in delivering a Sarbanes-Oxley compliant doc management system? And I'm sure everyone on the call recognizes that as SOX.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I think that it's a good tool for that. I mean, that's a great question. You're definitely thinking, it's like, hey, what can we use this system for? There's Sarbanes-Oxley products out there for document management that cost a lot of money. You might already own SharePoint. What are the requirements? The requirements are often, you need audit trails, you need signatures. Sarbanes-Oxley is all about having stage gates around decisions, controlling documents, having signatures, and having a record of that. Because remember, Sarbanes-Oxley is ultimately about, I'm the CEO of a company, and I approve of something, and it turns out to be fraudulent. I'm going to jail. So, so you have all these controls in place, including document control for key documentation, and so SharePoint could be a really good tool for that. And I recommend that you do some research. And there's even a couple white papers out there from consulting firms about using SharePoint for Sarbanes-Oxley. So that's a great question.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Oh boy, Daniel, thank you so much for sharing so much knowledge and teaming with USDM today. We do have other questions. I'd like to apologize to those of you we didn't quite get them in because of the time limitations here, but do know that I will work with Daniel and the USDM team here to get answers for you, and I'll be in touch directly to you following the session here. We do encourage you to take a look at our website, usdatamanagement.com. You can review other upcoming webinar events as well as the recorded session of those previously presented topics which might be useful for you and your team, again, all around compliance for life sciences. We'd invite you also to join our discussion on LinkedIn, the USDM LinkedIn group page. We appreciate your insight and your feedback, your suggestions for future topics. Let us know if the information was too high level, we didn't go deep enough. What can we do to best serve you in addressing pain points and such? Also, if you like the webinar, please help us out and show us that you liked it by clicking on the like button there. Again, it's the USDM LinkedIn group page. And even better, we'd love to see a comment, just a simple line or a quick statement. It might take you about 60 seconds, but it does mean the world to us because in 2012, this is a very important indicator that our management team is looking at and using as a basis to continue funding our complimentary series. So give us some feedback. Let us know your thoughts. And again, thank you, Daniel, for presenting with our team today, and thank you to so many of you for taking the time to join us. And we certainly appreciate the opportunity to team with you in working towards excellence in compliance. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.